And it's funny on that note. So magic helped me get in, which is fun. In the run up to it, like my school was very supportive, but schools sometimes they're more sort of academic, conventional, and so beforehand they did say not sure whether you should mention the magic, because it's not a proper academic subject, maybe stick to that law. And I was like, yeah, but I was thinking even back then, this is before Gustav Kuhn did all his amazing work on it, I was thinking, yeah, but there's still plenty of psychology and magic going on here, it's just a different flavor. We're coming at it from a different approach. So I thought, I'm going to mention it anyway. And then I got to the interview and he was like, yeah, well, I've got 20 people here, they've all got A's, they've all done, whatever they are, prefects and blah, blah, blah. Like, what? And then looked down it and then went, but tell me about magic. And so they went, how does magic psychology fit in? And then we ended up having, I don't know, about 2/3 of the thing was just talking about magic and how, psychology and how that might work or what the underpinnings or how it might overlap. Because, like anyone else, it's your 15th interview of the day and you're looking for something a bit different. And you go, oh, that'd be nice. And then that was, it wasn't the only thing, but it definitely helped. So I was like, well, there we go, so that's a good thing. Tell anyone listening who's young, tell your parents that, go, like, keep doing magic and you can get into a good university.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Desert Island Tricks. We have another phenomenal guest waiting today. Now, today's guest is, again, a really lovely person. If you ever get the chance to meet him, please do. He's such a lovely person, always gives such great advice and gives lots of his times. Now, he actually originally sort of studied experimental psychology at the University of Oxford. So you can sort of see maybe what his background interests are. He's also done talks for like TEDx, the Magic Circle. He's very, very knowledgeable in fields of science. So I had the opportunity to actually see him at the Magic Circle lecturing a few months ago for the Young Magicians Club. And that was such a fun, clever, really, really clever, especially something involving a jar. It was such a clever talk, and all of the kids absolutely loved it, and magicians will as well. So if he is lecturing, I very, very, very much recommend booking him in to have a lecture, because he is so engaging. And he's just had a new book out as well. So, not that we're plugging anything here, but do go check it out. Today's guest is the wonderful Mr. Oliver Meech.
Hello, thank you for having me. What a nice introduction. Thank you. Well, I have to say my knowledge is not across the entire world of science is not that broad, but the rest of exactly. I'm just hasten to add. But in terms of psychology, I've got a bit going on there, and all the rest of it is all good. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. I love the podcast, so it's really fun to be doing it.
Okay, so that's my questions about aliens and the meaning of life out of the window for today. Then.
I know, disappointing already. Shocking.
But I think your list of tricks is going to be quite quirky and diverse. That's my theory. I think there's going to be a good mixture of different things in there. Maybe one or two curveballs as well.
Yeah, that was the goal. It's interesting you mentioned the jar, because that may be coming up. But other than that, like, I've tried to do a real breadth, because I think some people are all about, one thing forever, but I've over the years I've done, we'll see, but I've done stage stuff, I've done close up, I've done kid stuff, I've done talks, I've done Edinburgh shows, I've done, whatever. I love variety and I love creativity. So that kind of, I think that comes through. I tried to also that it wasn't just, I love a card trick, but like, it wasn't just 8 card tricks or whatever. So yeah, hopefully there's a bit of a breadth and there's a bit of a, range from, over the years of life as well.
Well, you've been around the magic scene for a very, very long time. I remember in my younger years knowing about you and knowing about your magic. So you've created an awful lot of magic over the years.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one in that, like, I think a bit like, like Craig Petty sort of went away for a bit and then came back. Like, I feel like it's funny, we're both some similar things for different reasons. So in my case, I've always been into magic. It's not like I stopped doing it, but I've often been, like yourself and like many other people, I've often sort of juggled it with other jobs and other things. So I've also been into like creative advertising, like as a copywriter. So I've kind of done those in concert over the years. And then, yeah, exactly. Had the books, Plot Thickens, Plot Twist, that kind of thing came out. Then paused to have kids and also do Edinburgh shows and that kind of thing. And then had more recently, yeah, exactly. And then sort of more recently gone freelance again and finally had some more time to get back into it. Hence, the book effervescence, all that stuff. So yeah, exactly. It's weird. I've sort of been around a while, but still a bit of a best kept secret because there was a bit in between. But yeah, it's nice because it means in the background, my brain is always, as my poor wife will tell you, it's really not thinking. So on a good day, it's thinking, and it's often thinking about magic. So yeah, exactly. It's always bubbling away in the background.
And I love that some of your tricks, including the jar trick, because hopefully you'll give the story that you gave as to how you discovered the method of that, because I thought that was quite interesting. But do your tricks often come from a scientific angle? Is that sort of how your brain functions to create magic?
Interesting. So not necessarily always science, but definitely it's weird. I'm a very big fan of inspiration from outside magic. I think Simon Crave's, another really creative guy. I think he said that in a blog, but he has a similar thing. So a lot of my tricks, most of my tricks, certainly until recently, historically go from what's an interesting idea in the world, or what's a good concept, or whatever, if it's time travel, or if it's some psychological synesthesia or whatever, like what's an interesting thing, and then you go a bit like people, magicians do in pound stores sometimes with an object. You go, oh, there's got to be a trick in that. Like I just do that with the world. So I think some magicians have a very clear boundary between this is the magic world, this is what I love, it's cards, it's ESP cards, it's coins, it's whatever. And I've always gone and plot. That's the other thing. And hence my books is I've gone, here's some interesting things out in the world. How can we combine them with magic, or how can we use magic to simulate them? And then method wise, I kind of do both. So I think one, if there's an existing method that kind of works and is a great workhorse method, then I will use that because it works and it's brilliant, like you do with some of your releases. If there's a classic timeless method that you just know works, I don't know, out to lunch or whatever, that has been around for, classic force, whatever, like that's been around for years, and it will solve the problem, and I'll use that. I won't invent method for the sake of method very often. Which I think, magicians are very, very into methods, as we know. But it does mean the flip side of that is we've got this vast toolbox from hundreds of years of methods that you can apply to loads of things outside of magic. So sort of, yeah, presentation wise, I'm very into, and plot wise, I'm into. So yeah, often it will be wherever the method comes, and sometimes. Yeah, especially if it's cards, you've got a whole toolbox. If you've got a trick with a jar of pasta sauce, there's not as many. There's not many in there. You go to Conjuring Archive, then you don't get so many coming up. So you have to kind of go a bit more lateral. But I really like that combination. I think also it's better for like lay non-magicians, lay people, like they don't often think that way as well. I think that's the other thing they're very into, which is something I cover in my book. One of the topics is objects. Do the trick with the sponge balls. So I think it can be quite deceptive as well, because you go, well, here's a card trick method, but let's apply it to, I don't know, let's apply it to a packet of crisps, or let's apply it to photos. And as a magician, sometimes we go, oh yeah, it's just a card trick. It's just a cosmetic change. You've just changed the object. But to an audience member, it's not that anymore. And I'm not the first. I think I was listening to a lecture by Michael Hewitt. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but he was saying the same thing, like with the, he does trick with socks and it uses cards, but it's not a card trick. It's a sock trick that happens to use some cards. So I think that's the other upside of mixing and reapplying methods in different ways, is that often it helps audiences make it more deceptive for audiences because they're not used to thinking across different objects. They assume that the card trick has a card method and crisps has other method,
A crisp method.
A crisp method, yeah, exactly. They're from all the expert at the crisp table. Yeah, it's a very niche publication.
So maybe that's a lovely appetizer. So that gives us a good insight as to where we're going to go. Now, if this is your first time listening, the idea is that we are about to maroon Oliver on his own island. When he's there, he's allowed to take 8 tricks, 1 book, and 1 non-magic item that he uses for magic. Maybe a jar or a packet of crisps, who knows? The particulars, who's there, what's there, we do not mind. This is all in Oliver's own imagination. With that being said, let's find out what you put in your first position.
Okay, so my first position, I've got a whole range here, and some of them are probably a bit more offbeat than others, but then actually a lot of them you can use in different ways. So this is probably one that may well have come up before, and it is a classic, but it is Gemini Twins by Karl Fulves, or Fulves, I'm never sure how to pronounce his surname. And for people who don't know, the basic method is you deal through the cards. You have a deck of cards. You take two cards out as sort of predictions. You deal through very cleanly. The spectator says, or participant, sorry, says stop. You put the first card in face up, drop the rest on top. You go through again. You deal. They say stop. You put the second card in, put it face up on top. Drop the pack on. You spread out the pack and you take out the face-up cards and the cards next to them, and lo and behold, they are the mates of the card, or however you want to take it. And I know Andy Nyman you had on. I know he mentioned his love of the kick and you know and still available from Kmart Magic, most other place. But it's just a method. It's great. And the reason why I picked this is because it was sort of the first real trick that really got me properly into Magic, where the bug bit, and it was more self-working card tricks. I think I got it one Christmas, and I remember reading through, and I think it was maybe the first trick in the book, or certainly early on. And what was fun is because they're quite short write-ups in there, and I don't think it said how it worked. I think it said just follow these steps. So I put I set things up and I dealt them through, and I put the cards in, and it's such a clever, subtle method anyway. Then it said spread them out and turn them over, and they will match. And I kind of knew how one of them matched, but when the second one matched, I was like, how? Like it was that true moment of impossibility for yourself as a magician, which you don't get very much, where you're just like, but how? And that was really fun in a way, I think, because it starts training your brain, because you're not just spoon-fed the answers. I was like, well, how? Especially the second card, because it is really clever. Like how is this? Reverse engineering. How is this actually coming about? So I just thought that was fascinating. And then from there, I got pulled into it. And then I think I ended up getting Paul Daniels' Adult Magic was the other book I got. I'm showing my age, from in the whatever it was, 90s or something. And then at the back of there, it had a list of magic shops. And one of them was Davenport's. And so I went to Davenport's and discovered that, which comes on to my next one. But first, just to finish off on Gemini Twins. Yeah, I just think it's it's one of those tricks where I know Bannon said somewhere that if he wished he created the crosscut course, and it's that similar thing. Like, it's such a beginner's trick, and so you go, oh yeah, okay, fine. But then the more you think about it, or the more you create your own stuff, and sometimes you end up with these really messy labyrinthine methods, or you try and be really hands off, but there's some awkward compromise somewhere along the way with materials or how direct it is, and it's just so clean, it's ridiculous. And you can vary it. Liam Monty has got some great tricks with it, like various versions he's done. You can just do it with one card, doesn't need to be cards, photos, whatever. It's just like the method is quite, it's definitely more the sort of psychological subtlety rather than hardcore sleight of hand. So that was really interesting early on to be like, oh, and one of those things that you have to keep reminding yourself as a magician, where you just go, you have to always jump back to sort of not knowing that thing where, when you know how it's done, you go, surely that won't fly. Surely they won't realize that it's actually just that instead of that, whatever. And then you do it and you go, no. And it's just, it's so strong. And yeah, so I just, that was the first real thing that hit me hard. And then I explored all bunch of things. And then more recently, I've come back to, rediscovering the joys of card magic. So it's funny how things go full circle.
Well, that's the thing with that method as well, is it can be done with a normal deck of cards, or you can add in a blank deck and then you have another one. And then as you mentioned, you've got the kick, the casino kick. You can do it with photos, with train tickets. There's just so much that you can do, but each time it feels like an entirely different trick, even though, technically it's a systematic process that just sort of happens. But it's just a phenomenal effect each time, and it feels totally different.
Yeah, and I think it's such a good way. I think it was Craig Petty was interviewing me, and he was asking what was like, people go, how do you become more creative in magic? And it can be daunting if you haven't done it before, and it's hard to know where to start, And I think sometimes people feel like they have to leap into some really complex, Jan Fresh, like some or whatever. They have to create some like epic, like FISM thing. But as a starting point, tricks like that are brilliant because, like you say, there's so much flexibility there, and the method is rock solid. You can also, you can do it, split them in half, a la John G, and you've got 4 selections. Like you can do it with just 1 selection. You can do like the cards going in stay face up, so there could even be something on the back of there. Like you say, it's really reliable, but also really flexible. So I think that's a good starting point to just go pick not quite any subject, but almost any subject in the world and almost any object that is sort of vaguely flat and you can deal. And you just go and you've got a trick that is great, and or Andy Nyman, or you leave them blank and write things on, and you can write anything in the world on there. So it's one of those really good things to go that I think often in magic, I was going to mention this later, but I think it's a good point, is sometimes people feel like every trick is one trick. And we do have, there are some like, I don't know, shuffleboard or something like that. They're just so good, or some of John Bannon's creations, they're so elegant and cunning that they feel like that is the trick or people's signature routine, and that is the only way they can be. But without going too multiverse on it, like most tricks are many tricks, like within or can be, you get one flavor. And I think that's weird in magic, is that we don't always vary. Sometimes we do, but every trick you can go, oh, actually, can you? And I think from being in advertising and brainstorming different concepts for ads and stuff like that, it's really showing my brain to go, okay, here's the concept. Then you go, what are 10 ways you can vary it? Like you say, with like vary the object, vary how they're saying stop, vary the reveals, vary the number of choices, just go almost every trick, not all of them, but almost every one. You can still push and twist it into 5-6 different things. So I think creativity doesn't have to be as daunting as it needs to be,
Well, it's a great first choice, and it leads us nicely because you've sort of teased it into a number 2. So what did you put in your second position?
So number 2, I know I seem to be mentioning Andy Nyman a lot, but he's brilliant. So I was torn here between 2. So I was considered. These are both tricks that I saw demmed when I went into Davenport. And I considered Rainbow Cascade by Royal Walton because it's a classic. And also, it's interesting, I know John Bannon's, sort of popularized the fractal examinable packet tricks at the end. And that's examinable at the end, and that's an old trick, but actually it's examinable at the end. So it was almost that, but I went for Killer Elite instead because I thought it'd be a bit more different, so it's not just card tricks. And I should say this was demmed for me by Paul Henry, who's a lovely guy, and he's sort of like he's brilliant and probably not as well known among magicians as he could be, but he's lovely and a brilliant demmer. Like he does excellent things in entertainment in a different way. But he was, back in the day, he was brilliant. It was him and Oliver Tabor, who were at Davenport's when I was, back when I was a 16-year-old, whatever it was. And it was really nice because he was always demming stuff, and that was one of the tricks he demmed. And I didn't actually own it. I think I was buying other stuff. I was always, I didn't have a load of money, so I was just sort of like buying what I could. I think a bit like, sometimes there's maybe a Christmas toy that you never get as a kid because of that, it becomes this mythical state. So I think it was the same thing because of that. Because I never owned it myself, I always loved watching him perform it. So I got nice memories of that because, checking my notes, because of, he then invited me to the Demon Club. This is Paul Henry, sorry. And that's where I met a whole bunch of other magicians. So I made a little list. So the people I mentioned, and then Angelo Carboni, Wayne Trice, John Allen, James Pritchard, lots more too. So it was really nice hub of young magicians. It was the first sort of magic group or gang that I was part of. So it was that really went from, when you've got that sort of slight interest, like the Young Magicians Club now, going from that sort of interest into the full blown, right, that's it for life. Now you're in, there's no way back. You just are fully in magic now. And I think, I should sum up the trick for people who don't know. So Killer Elite is you have 4 postcards. I know Alakazam put out a version as well more recently, so I believe. So you have 4 postcards of famous movie killers. So I can't remember the full characters. You probably know more than me, but it was I know there was Taxi Driver on there, and I think
Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs, I was going to say, and 2 others. And they pick really clearly, and you tell a story which is like, where you talk about how, they all meet up, and it's, the tensions arise, and guns shoot out, and only one person, is left standing. And then the audience member decide, and they win the casino chip. That's it. So you take them out on envelope, and then they go, who won this priceless casino chip? and the audience member says, and then you reveal in a very cool way who that you knew in advance who it was, and whatever happens, the ending's really cool. And I just thought it was such a good, such an interesting trick. Because to these are all sort of, and what did I learn from this? So as well as being a nice memory, so I think it really helped me realize early on that the power of a simple method when it's combined with a really strong presentation, which is like you do with your bizarre stuff often, like how much in the imagination you can conjure. Because I remember them saying, "Oh, imagine this is from and it's not just 4 postcards, and they go, 1, 2, 3, 4, point to 1. Oh, look, you pick the number 3, and here on the back it says you will choose this one." It was so much more atmospheric and all the rest of it, and that was a really good lesson, I think, in terms of. And also, not without saying the method, like in some ways a classic method, but brilliantly applied, or a sort of tried and tested method, brilliantly applied. And also just going, okay, this doesn't have to be the latest, gadgetry, feel like you're in a Bond movie, cute, like whatever. Like you can use some really smart methods that other people might just go, oh yeah, it's just that method, like, and discount it to do something really interesting and atmospheric. And also, I've just got nice memories of it from, times going into town and wandering around. It was also nice when I read the Warlock Effect, and it was fun because a lot of that set around Charing Cross, and so we would often go there at a weekend and we'd share magic, and then we'd sort of go into the Charing Cross Hotel and try not get chucked out of their bar, sip a Coke and an overpriced Coke, and do magic tricks and play around there. So really good memories, and it's a cracking trick.
Yeah, it is. It's a phenomenal trick. It was one of the ones that when I first started gigging, I had Killer Elite Pro, which was the one with like a small leather wallet. And I still have it, but it's completely worn out. The writing on the back is worn off. The plastic inside's broken where I used it quite a lot. And it was the first time that really got me into storytelling magic as well, because
makes sense.
It's a lovely story that you can tell with it. The idea of these guys sitting down for a card game, things get a little bit heated. They pull out their weapons, and one of them survives because this poker chip in their pocket repels the bullet, which is a lovely idea anyway. And that was the time where, I don't know if you remember, Nyman brought out like the hidden Dice Man, Killer Elite. They were I
remember
all
Dice Man as well.
time.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. Yeah, just this hit like bang, bang, bang. Excuse pardon the pun, but yeah, exactly. Just like excellent trick after excellent trick. Yeah.
But they were all really strong methods that were so fooling. And I would say that Killer Elite probably started the precedents for that sort of routine. It's the one that really coined the structure of that kind of trick. 4 things, maybe 1 or 2 other objects if needed. Yeah. And there's been so many versions of it since, but they all follow the Killer Elite system, I would argue.
Yeah. And I think also going back to, like you were saying, like the tricks you develop, and also going back to even those, like Killer Elite, like, in terms of outside inspiration, it's that thing again. You just go, it's not that magic isn't interesting. It is. It's fascinating. Look at Joshua Jay's How Magicians Think. Like there's loads in magic that is fascinating, but you just go, in the same way that, not all songs are about this is the verse and now is the chorus, or you get occasional Hollywood movies that are about Hollywood movies, but most of the time they're a movie that are about something else. So it's the same thing, Dice Man, cool, inspired by the book, but its own really cool method in its own right. And then obviously the evolution of that with sort of Tom Stone's fun take on it, and then. Yeah, exactly. And the same with Killer Elite. You've got this whole atmospheric thing. It just feels like, to me, it feels like in the same way that comedy, you can have a comedy special, and it could be, especially at the Edinburgh Fringe, it can be about any topic in the world, and you can do a comedy show about it. And magic is hopefully moving that way. It just feels to me like the same thing with magic. You should be able to have almost any topic of the world, like room plans, barn loss, childless, show like that. Like you should be able to have any topic in the world and then go, now I will explore this through magic. Or, not in a whole concept show necessarily, just even if it was one trick, but you just go, so many interesting things in the world. Why not use all of them as starting points,
Yeah, absolutely. And both great choices so far. So we've got Gemini Twins and Killer Elite. So that brings us to number 3. So what's in your third position?
So number three. So now we sort of flash forward a little bit of time to me going to uni. So I went to a comprehensive school, but I was smart and obviously fortunate, and I went to apply to Oxford and was lucky to get in. And it's funny on that note. So magic helped me get in, which is fun. So in the run up to it, like my school was very supportive, but schools sometimes they're more sort of academic, conventional, and so beforehand they did say, oh well, I was writing my application. They said, oh, that's all good, but I'm not sure whether you should mention the magic, because it's not a proper academic subject. Maybe stick to that law. And I was like, yeah, but I was thinking even back then. This is before Gustav Kuhn did all his amazing work on it. I was thinking, yeah, but there's still plenty of psychology and magic going on here. It's just a different flavor. We're coming at it from a different approach. So I thought, I'll mention it anyway. And then I got to the interview, and it was really because I was saying, and he basically said in words, and he was like, yeah, well, whatever. I've got 20 people here. They've all got A's. They've all done, whatever they are, prefects and blah blah blah. Like, what? And then looked down it and then went, but what's tell me about magic. And so they went, how does magic psychology fit in? And then we ended up having, I don't know, about 2/3 of the thing was just talking about magic and how, psychology and how that might work, or what the underpinnings or how it might overlap. Because, like anyone else, if it's your 15th interview of the day and you're looking for something a bit different, you go, oh, that'd be nice. And then that was, it wasn't the only thing, but it definitely helped. So I was like, well, there we go, so that's a good thing, tell anyone listening who's young, tell your parents that, go, like, keep doing magic and you can get into a good university. So, So anyway, but when I was at uni, they had balls where like sort of disco events with music and like bouncy castles and whatever else, and like students go along and stuff. And anyone who had some skill like juggling or magic or whatever went, oh, you can get a free ticket, did that, whatever, and you maybe get a little bit of money. So I signed up to do that, and I was entertaining the queue while they were waiting to come in. So it was my first real experience of sort of like back-to-back close-up magic of going up to people. And I remember standing on the opposite side of the road before I had to do it, and I'm quite introvert when I'm off stage, so I was like, come on Oliver, you can do this, and going, oh, that approach before you go up and go, hey, la 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 la. And so Jay Sankey, who's obviously massively creative, holy moly, was one of the tricks I did for that. And for people who don't know the trick, it's just a brilliant trick. You may know Keymaster, which is obviously like Craig Petty's sort of like moving whole, but he applies it to a key. So before that, I get also a brilliant trick. Okay, so for those, if you don't know, so holy moly, you have 2 metal washers, like you might get from IKEA or whatever, or a plumber use. And then you hold on to one of them, and you hand another one to the audience member to hold in their hand. Then you reach over and you pull the hole off your washer, so it's now got no hole. You seem to drop that or rub it into their hand. Then when they open their hand, they have 2 holes in their washer, and everything can be examined. The reason I think it's such a good trick is it's really engaging. There's something about metal that obviously is even harder than card to move around. Moving a hole is a weird thing, but it's still quite visual. It's fast, happens in a hand. And the other thing I think is really smart is that it feels like the kind of thing that you might suspect, and audiences members do. They can see might be some weird like mechanical thing with some really, really complex mechanism going on. And actually, without saying what the method is not that. It's much simpler and neater than that. But I think that's a really smart method construction. And I want to say, I'm not sure if this is correct, but I want to say that it was Davenport maybe who talked about how audience members, when they're thinking for a solution, it's a bit like they're sort of looking in a garden or a walled garden. And the idea as a magician is you sort of put up these perceptual walls where they're they're going to sort of search for a method, and then you try and put the method on the other side of that wall. So I don't know if that was Ortiz, but yeah, I always stuck with me as an interesting way of looking at creativity, because the same thing with the method. I think that's why it's so falling. As long as your brain, or if they're asking the wrong question, as long as their brain is going, what is the mechanism? How does this mechanism work? They're never going to find the true method. So I think it was just really smart. Yeah, I did that, and then I did a weird trick with one of those sort of like fake plastic eyes. I sort of pretended to pop my eyeball out as an opener, and then obviously very serious magician even back then, not silly at all. And then I do Holy Moly, and then I'd finish with Jeff McBride's Kundalini Love Rising, and that was my set. And then I'd rinse and repeat that 20 times going down the line. So that's my favorite, and also because Jay Sankey's just amazingly creative and prolific. So I've hoovered up a lot of his stuff over the years because it's just so good.
Yeah, it's a great trick. And I know that you mentioned Keymaster, but I think before Keymaster, the version, I never owned Holy Moly. I remember going to New York when I was younger, and there's a magic shop in just off of Times Square. But when I was in there, they had Key Deposit, which was a version of Holy Moly that Jay Sankey also brought out, where the hole goes onto the key. So a very early remnants of Keymaster.
That's interesting how things evolve. Yeah.
But it sort of had the tag. So you would have the key. You took the key off of the keychain and handed it to them. And then you had the key tag. And then you would wave the tag. The hole would disappear. And then when they opened up, there were 2 holes on the key.
Oh, that's interesting. That's ringing a dim bell now you mention that. I'd forgotten there was a version like that as well. Yeah.
And it's such a clever trick. But what's lovely is I can imagine, you mentioned about sort of not being serious and being a bit silly. What I think is interesting there is, even now, because I'm guaranteeing there's very few magicians that perform that effect now in working sets, but what a different, strange, unique thing to do, to take a hole off of one thing and make it appear on something else in their hand. I think it's such a great trick that's probably been overlooked in recent years that I think a lot of people should check out, really.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, I think like if I didn't own that, I would own, Keymaster or whatever, just because I happen to already be doing that one. But it's like, that's really nice as well. Or the Sankey, because it's so organic and it makes sense that there would be a hole in it and stuff. But I just, it's just weird, but in a good way, like you say. And also I think in the same way that you go, what's the impossible thing, and then how can you make that most impossible? In the same way that like in traditionally Copperfield, you go, what vanishing something. What's the most impressive thing to vanish? Something massive, Statue of Liberty, whatever. It's similar thing with that, where you're going. Moving a hole is weird anyway, like you say, and interesting and different. And but doing it, how do you make it much harder? Even though it might not actually be harder method wise, doing it in a piece of metal feels logically harder than doing it in card. And also it's got that nice cartoon logic thing, which I love. I love a bit of not necessarily a cartoon style, but that warped logic where you just go, oh, well, obviously you pull that off there and pull, we've all seen that in cartoons growing up. So I think it's got something nice back there. Yeah. And it just feels immediately, I like stuff that immediately feels, same with card tricks, where even if you're just tearing them, or even if you're just doing something where you just go, what? Oh, this is where, like in a film, when you're watching a film and then it suddenly takes a left turn, you're like, oh, this is new. Where are we going now? Like, I think that's really nice in a show, while also still being punchy, because I think when I was younger, I struggled sometimes with that. I think when I was creating early on, I still have this, is sometimes I do something that was really interesting and out there, but it wasn't necessarily that punchy, or you'd have to spend a lot of time explaining the backstory of it. From Bizarre Magic, sometimes like you want to keep things moving, you want to set the scene, but you don't always necessarily want to spend 10 minutes telling elaborate story. You want to do it, still keep it tight. So I think that's really nice. You can do it, the whole trick with the whole, you can do it almost silently, and it feels really quirky, but it's still punchy, which is not always doable. So yeah, great trick for several reasons.
Well, I think one of the nicest compliments we can get from a lay audience is, I've never seen magic like that. Because that makes it feel like a unique experience that they've never had before.
Yeah, and I think, because even with Fool Us and stuff like that, like I think we know a lot about it, but maybe, even I as a magician, I haven't seen all the episodes, like I've seen a few, and I've seen bits that pop up, but it's like, people will have seen more magic. There's still plenty of people who haven't seen much at all, or if they have, it's still a lot of, pick a card, sorry, someone in half, like the cliches are still all there. So like you say, it's so nice when they notice that for you, because if you do care about being creative, because you get the flip side sometimes. I remember doing some like a showcase thing, and I did some. It was quite highly conceptual, quite complex, probably in retrospect, but it was sort of a version of a sneak thief kind of presentation thing, and it was fun. But I was trying to do an improv thing with it, and it was good, but it was okay. You know, it was very creative, but it was I mean, it was still a work in progress. It was a little bit out of that. And then the people after me were some musicians, and they did the Vanishing Bandana, and it just stormed the place, and everyone was like, "Oh," they were like, "Yeah, yeah, enjoyed your show, but oh, that bandana thing, those guys, woo!" And I was just a little part, I know, just well, not even a little part, a big part of me died inside, and you were like, "Come on, come on!" There's like zero originality going on there. So yeah, exactly. So when you get an audience that member that really appreciate, or they go, "Oh," or you get even you go, "Oh, I never really liked standard magic, but that was really interesting," or that was, or you know, like Darren shows, whatever doesn't feel like magic, or you know, like a good bizarre piece, or like I remember you saying with the restaurant, and you know, sometimes people are hearing voices, where you just go, that's not the kind of thing I know, you know, exactly. Same reason I do a pasta sauce job, because you just go with what pasta sauce, what? Like I remember backstage once I used to do. Lovely Katya organized it in Magic Night in Madame Jojo's, and I used to do stage shows there years back. And I remember one night I had my collection of random whatever Pringles tube and other bits and bobs, whatever random objects I was playing with, and Piff was on the same night, John Davenport, and he was like. He was like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, but I took it as a kind of compliment, because I was like, well, this is great. This is someone dressed in a dragon suit going, oh, that's a bit out there. What are you doing there? So I was like, there we go. This is obviously a good sign of doing something different. So yeah.
Great. I can imagine some of the weird stuff he had in his case at that point as well.
Exactly. I didn't have a dog in there. So, it's all swings and roundabouts. But, obviously he's gone and see wonderful things, again, also by being different. So it's so nice that when magicians are different, and any tricks, that can get you a little bit out there, or get, like you say, people go, oh, I haven't seen something like that before. That's got to be a good thing.
Great. Well, that leads us on to number 4. So what's in your 4th position?
Okay, so number 4 is again jumping forward. So this is number 4 is the hydrostatic glass, and I am ashamed to say I don't know who invented it. I got mine from Davenport's. They had a set there with the sort of like little instructions and a glass. And the secret something, and it's one of those, again, it's one of those beginner's tricks that people go, oh yeah, okay, you do that, and then they forget about it. But I remember reading and hearing Alan Shaxson used to also include it, and a bit like Billy McComb, or a bit like people like that, people who have like been there, done that in front of the audiences for years and years and years, and you just go, oh, that's interesting. When people pick something that they know plays for a reason, you go, I think maybe there's got to be something in that. And so I think that's the other thing. It's always good to try tricks out in front of an audience, because you just don't, like jokes with a comedian, you just don't know how they'll play. And you get the reverse. You get some tricks that you just go, oh, this is so ingenious, this is so clever. And you show the audience, like some, not all, but some, like any card, any number, or whatever it is, multi-phase, whatever. And then sometimes they're just like, oh yeah. And then you show something else that you just go, oh, it's just a whatever it is, just beginner's trick. And they're like, ooh. So I did that. Yeah. So I was doing a trick. This is when I was doing Edinburgh. So I was preparing for my first Edinburgh Fringe show. And I was doing one about time travel. And it's funny, I actually met Morgan West there. We were both flyering on the same road, like a little bit up from each other. So, by the third day, you're flying there next to each other, you get chatting. And I realized they'd come up also with a show called Time Traveling Magicians. So it was a funny, great minds and all that. So I was doing a show called Time Warper, which was sort of had a story in it. Had as per me, it had lots of stuff going on. And then one of the things was about pausing time. And so I would do the hydrostatic glass, in case you don't know, as you can tell, my brain hops around a lot. Is you have a glass, the magician, you pour some water into the glass, you cover it with a coaster or a postcard, something like that, something, you turn it over, and then you let go, if you wet the coaster, then it sort of clings on, and you go, which is as it would from sort of science, and then you pull the coaster away, and then there's nothing there seemingly, but the water doesn't fall out, and then when you want, you can have the water drop into a bucket below. So I would do that with a monologue, and it just worked really nicely. So I'd fill it up, and then I'd hold it up, and then I would just hold it above my head, because I didn't like I always like, if there's going to be jeopardy, I feel like it should be on me. I don't feel like it should be in the audience. I'm not a fan of the hands, the smash and stab for that reason. I don't want to spike someone else's hand. Like I've chosen to do this show. So it's the same thing with that. I didn't want to like worry about getting someone else wet, but then also it was just really fun. So I do a sort of short monologue about, if you could pause time, would you, and what would be the benefits, but then what would be the downsides. So maybe we shouldn't pause time, but without being too deep, like without being too pretentious. But it was just really fun because you could talk about this thing, but just while holding a full glass of water above your head. And it was just really intriguing because it's I suppose like the is it Hitchcock? The people having dinner with the bomb hidden behind the table, like that concept is that sort of, it was what could be a bit philosophical and a bit whatever, but it just added a little bit of an element of danger. And I think I asked on the Magic Circle forum because I couldn't remember who said it, and I think someone helpfully said it was Bob Reed who said that you should try and do tricks with. I hope I got that right. Gary Jones then told me it was him. I think with glass, water, fire, and money, because glass is fragile, and then fire is dangerous, and water is hard to manipulate, and money, people want to have more money. So it ticks the box in that it's got the glass and it's got the water, and doing tricks with water is generally. If anyone's done it, it does add a certain something because it is harder to manipulate. So it's a really good trick, and one of those, like, it got really good response, like more than you think. You go, oh yeah, I'll just go, yeah, and then you try it, and like people are like, what? And also, which is fun, if you, depending on how you dip things, whatever, if it gets wet in a certain way, you get a little drip coming off which is really fun. So while I'm talking, you get a little, if you sort of douse the coaster and then stick it on, as you're talking, it's literally dripping on your head like a couple of times, which really helps sell the illusion. Great trick, surprisingly good trick, and it added a different flavor within the show as well. It wasn't all interaction or all look at me. It was allow me to do a sort of monologue-y bit. So yeah.
Yeah, I love the hydrostatic glass, but I do always recall Paul Zenon performing it. I think it was on Tricky Christmas, and it goes slightly awry, and that man gets drenched, and then Paul gets a lovely glass over him, which I always loved. But what I really enjoy about what you just said there was that the concept that you put behind it of time stopping still, and you're just holding the glass there. I think that's a really nice thing, and getting the audience to think, what are the advantages of time stopping? What would you do during that time? Because it becomes so much more than just a trick. And I always remember In and of Itself, the Derek Delgaudia show, where he has that the section with a brick in a window, and he's sat next to it, and you see it for just a brick until he tells this story. And the entire meaning of that brick, it becomes something entirely different. It almost becomes like a weapon, or I don't know. And that's what that story for me does with the glass. That moment with you contextualizing it with time stopping, it becomes something so much more than just a glass and water at that point.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of space for that. I think also you can do things with a light touch as well. So you can do that. It wasn't, the whole thing was, I don't know what it was, maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes long, if that, like you don't need, and especially if you've got a really simple trick. Like I think it's harder sometimes if you're trying to do a really interactive gambling demonstration or something, and then you're also trying to layer on, actually, this is all about the chance we have in our life or whatever. I think I don't know. There's probably some axiom that the more complex the idea you're laying on top, the simpler the trick that goes along when it needs to be. But on a really basic level, I think you can. Yeah, I think I think sometimes we think in just two binary options in Magic. We go, oh, either you just say, I don't know, 6-card either you go, oh, 2 ropes are timed together, oh, and blow, and now they become one again. Or it's this, or people picture it as a 10-minute, from the mystical like the world of blah, 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 and this really overladen thing. But I think just somewhere in between, there's always bits in between. I think, a hint of that is interesting. And you look at in films with, I know it's a slight side point, but with like the important object, and they'll have like a necklace or something, or I think in Encanto or something where, it's to be torn and restored, but it'll be done with a family photo and someone's, face will be torn out or whatever. You just go, it doesn't take a lot sometimes to add that layering, and to just mix up the style of show, because I think sometimes it's easy as a magician to get into a particular rhythm. And I know I do that. Like I have another trick where I don't talk in my act because I know I'm very chat, talk all the time. And also idea. So every now and then I'm like, I need something to pause and slow that down. So yeah, but I think so. Like why not make it about something else or reframe it? Because, you know, not all the time, but, you know, maybe one of the tricks you do, why not?
When I perform at gigs, I look at effects that tick these 3 boxes. Is it super strong and powerful? Yes. Will it last with your spectators for a lifetime? Absolutely. And does it leave them with a souvenir that perfectly captures the moment of magic? If that all sounds exactly what you're after, look no further than the liquid forks. These forks have been custom designed to be able to bend right in front of your spectators' eyes. It's so easy to perform, it's so visual, and trust me, they will honestly keep this impossible object because they've seen it morph in front of their eyes. It literally does the impossible. Not only that, Liquid Forks comes with 50 of these forks in each pack, and it comes with the full Liquid Forks routine taught by the world famous David Penn. Not only that, we have a subscription service. If you guys love these forks and you get through them at your gigs, we now offer a monthly subscription where you get sent a box through every single month at a 10% reduced fee. Like I said, you guys are going to be loving these. You're going to be performing them every chance you can. Trust me, the reactions are second to none. So guys, head over to alakazam.co.uk, pick up a set of Liquid Forks. You will not regret it. Easy to do. Leaves them with a killer souvenir. And to be honest with you, it's not cards, it's not coins, it's not mentalism. It's something beyond belief. Check it out now, guys, the Liquid Forks.
And just looking at your list so far, we've got a deck of cards, postcards, washers, and now a glass of water, which just shows how varied this is. But let's lead it into number 5. So what's in your 5th position?
Okay, so number 5, continue with theme. We're going to hop into some mentalism. So, but it's also mentalism about time travel or about psychology because, you know, why not? So this is a proven method. It's that thing of here's your box of tools that 500 years of magicians have created. Here's any premise or presentation you have that you'd like to do. And, you know, chances are, not always, most of the time, you can find something that fits together. So my 5th choice is Wordo, also known as, well, it was marketed as Wordo originally, but I'll just sort of describe what the trick is. I came across it in Barry Richardson's Theatre of the Mind, which are excellent books. Like I really like his sort of approachable, warm. It's sort of mentalism, but it's also very interactive. It's not sort of, I am the great strokey beard person. It's very much sort of like, oh, isn't this an interesting thing about the mind? So it really appealed. And just method-wise, sorry, I should go what it is, and then we'll jump into that. So I featured this in 2 shows to achieve very different plots. So I think it's an interesting one to literally show an example of that. So the basic trick is it allows you to say if you've got a book, it allows you to get a book. The audience can name any page number they want, or you can flick through and they can stop. You then run your hand down the page with a bookmark, or you can do other things. And they say stop whenever they like. They can see there's different words on the page. They say stop. They read out the word that they have stopped on, and you know that word. And that word can be either, you can either read the mind supposedly, or it can be predicted somewhere or whatever. So it's so clean. I think there's so many. I love Derren Brown's, since his early books, I loved his concept of invisible compromise. The idea that you have to compromise somewhere because you don't actually have magical powers, but to try and make that compromise invisible to the audience. And I think sometimes you get the other extremes. Obviously, this is not everything, but sometimes with some things like really propless mentalism, for instance, it's propless, which is great, but then it's very visible compromise, and there's a lot of like, think of a number between these two, and then you're adding that, and then you take away one from that, and you add one from that, and you're having a range between 15 and 20, and it all feels very visually or verbally compromised. Whereas something like an invisible deck, even though, again, it's seen as often dismissed as, oh, yeah, it's just that, like you've got, it's so, the compromise is very compromised as a pack, but it's invisible because it seems what you can actually say in terms of their freedom of choice is you go, name any card, bosh, there it is. And it's the same thing with this, with the Word Force, which I love. It's like any page you want. Like I've had people go, okay, name a page from, I say, 100 to 200. They name any page, you get that page, you say, there's a whole bunch of words on here. Without going to method, you can say, I want it to be clear which word we stop on. So you don't even, the nice thing is if you phrase it right, which is a Barry Richardson thing, because he also explains a version with a paperclip, which I believe is Bruce Elliott, apparently, who came up with the paperclip version. But the nice thing is you script it right, they don't even know that object's there. So it seems like you're just pointing, you like any page at all, you run your finger down, it seems, your hand down, they say stop, that's the word. It's just so fair. And you can do it with any book as long as it doesn't take long to make up, and then any book you like. So I use that same principle, one with a sort of bookmark and one with a paperclip, in two very different tricks. So I did show, my time travel show. I did a thing where I'd sort of come out and show some blank boards, a bit like a sort of slate test, but just with I can't remember what they're called, foam board, like A3 foam boards. So I come out and I show them, two of them, and then have someone in the audience hold them, clamp them tight, and then I'd have someone else pick a word, any word they like, and then I say, to prove I'm time traveling, I'm going to now travel back in time to earlier today and scribble something on the board. So I'd hold a marker. Now I needed some static electricity to get going, so I put some music on and I get everyone else like shuffling around and dancing, which again, big fan of fun, but also it really loosens the audience up, which in Britain, in America, I love it because everyone's up for it from day one. Whenever I have Americans in when I do a show, it would just be like, whereas the Brits, sometimes you have to be like, come on, people, and then people loosen up and get into it. So they boogie around. I'd sort of freeze as if I was, stuck in time, and then I'd supposedly have traveled, and then they'd say, what's the word? And they open up the boards that were blank, and then the word had been scribbled on there. So it was a really, again, it's a book, it's a book test, and it's a force and a reveal, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like a sort of fun, interactive. It's just a very different flavor, because I think sometimes, I love a good book test, but again, a bit like cups and balls or whatever. Sometimes they start a book test and you go, oh, okay, I know where this is going for as a magician, I know where this is going for the next 8 minutes, so it's fun, I think, to twist things, and it's just really clean. So that was the first version. And then in another show later on, I was doing the show called Live Brain Surgery, because you got to intrigue the punters, and it was sort of partly inspired by the man who mistook his wife for a hat. So about sort of these extraordinary states of mind that people have. And I think you saw this trick. I think I did this for the young magicians, I think. So it's based on synesthesia, which is where people's senses get blended together. And so in the routine I do, I start with taste. So they taste, if I can get a fresh lemon, they bite into a lemon and they call out whatever color they think of first. So red, green or blue, and I predict that. Or a sweet, which is Leon Montier's suggestion if I can't get a fresh lemon. And then and then I have them listen to a tune on a music box, and then they pick a particular shade of green based on that. And then they've got different names like paints, and then I reveal that I've got that. So it's very different. So from an audience member, hopefully, you've got one trick where you're sort of picking a word and you're pausing time and then scribing something. And then you've got another show where it's about psychology and you're sort of simulating someone having blended senses together. But the method is the same method. So I think it's just really getting that sense of separating in your head what's the method, and then what could the plot be or presentation be to go with it, because they can be quite different. But again, like I say, but it's nice because it's at the heart of the routine. It's there's the compromise is pretty invisible. I should say, if anyone's interested, so obviously check out Theory of the Mind. It's great. Also, Sankey had a project called Slider with a Y, and he's again great brainstorming brain. So he comes up obviously with multiple different ways to push it, and like loads of different things you can do with it. But yeah, exactly, great flexible method, and again something that doesn't get used that much, I think, because it's all people forget about it or whatever. But just flexibility, like pick any book, pick any page, force a word, do with it what you want.
Yeah, I think that's the key there. Instead of just having a book or a selection of books, it's the freedom. I think that's the payoff there. You get a freedom of different books. It feels really organic and fair. I do remember this one because I've got a friend of mine that has synesthesia. So when you brought that up, it sort of rung something in my mind, like I wonder where this is going. But even that's another really lovely concept that maybe the general public don't know, but because there's truth behind it, they can literally go and Google synesthesia and
I think probably in a similar way with, when you talk about, some part of history that people may not know, or, Highgate Cemetery or whatever it happens to be, like I think it's without overplaying it, but I just think it's interesting if they come away, on the flip side, if you watch some movie on a streaming service and they've spent millions on it and it's just utterly generic, I mean, you get the reviews, people go, yeah, it was fine, but I couldn't remember what it was about 2 minutes afterwards, or it's just not like, it's just the same old stuff, and it's all very good, but there's just nothing to, there's no sustenance there, there's no nourishment, Whereas I think, yeah, exactly, give them, maybe don't, unless it's a lecture, don't give them 10 of them, but maybe give them, just give them something interesting to an interesting concept. If you've got an interesting, it doesn't, as long as it doesn't feel too crowbarred together. But even if it does, like, I'd rather have a crowbar together that says something about something else rather than going, oh, so I went to the magic shop and they showed me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards and I threw away 1, 2, 3 cards and they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Hey, talk to me about synesthesia. They either like the trick or they like the concept. Maybe they like a bit of both. You've got 3 bites of the cherry. So yeah, exactly. I think give when I worked in creative agencies, someone would just, like, one of the rules of thumb was say something new. Then it was that, or show something new. Like, it's as a basic thing. Just, they might not know, and it's interesting. Why not?
That's the thing. I think that we're lucky with being magicians, and again, performers don't think about this, is that we are blessed that we have a narrative and we have the skill. So we have both of those worlds. So if you have a play and people don't like the story, well, then you're sort of done for. If you have a musical, I guess you're sort of a bit more blessed because you have the music and the story. So if you like the music, then great. It's okay if the story's a bit rubbish. But if you've got a really good story and the music's a little bit rubbish, then you've got that. But with magic and magicians, we have the chance to give them a great story. And if they don't like the story, they'll love the magic, and vice versa. If they're not a massive fan of magic, but they don't mind it, then that's cool. But then you've got a great narrative that at least does something for their imagination that way.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Yeah, exactly. Just give them, like, more to enjoy. Exactly. Like you say, you've got, and we've all been to see shows like that on the flip side, which don't have that, where you go, oh, well, the songs were all right, but the sets, the sets were amazing or whatever. Or, at least you've got, if you exactly like you say, if you're only giving the same thing, if you've got like generic presentation without being too negative, if you've got generic presentation, you've got no story, you've got, I don't know, the premise, the premise is old hat or whatever, or not particularly engaging, then you've only got the secret. It's that, that old thing, like, not that the secret doesn't matter, it does, obviously, but if you've got that, all that plus a story plus all the other things you say, you've just got more chances. And also, we know audiences are different. You get some audiences, if you do a wedding or whatever, you go up to different groups. Some audiences, they're just all about the banter. Some audiences, visual magic, they absolutely love it. Some audiences, they want to talk about mind reading or some tarot type thing. They're all into relationships or whatever. Like, so if you've just got more, like a meal, I love food. So, it's a meal. Yeah, exactly. If you've got a taster menu, they're going to like something, the old saying, something for everything. If it's something for everyone, just have more things. Yeah, have more things in there. And then you've got more possible, exactly, things for them to be interested in.
Great. So we're going from a mentalism effect into number 6, which is?
Okay, so number 6. This is, funnily enough, this is a card trick, but created by mentalists. So it's this is B-Wave or B-Wave. I don't know. I always pronounce it B-Wave. I'm not sure. By Max Maven or Phil Goldstein. I think I can't remember which name he released it under. But again, classic trick. And the reason being, so some magicians, like Jeff McBride, I don't know if he did a lecture about magic 24/7. He's always on, and from my understanding, he is, and he's amazing, and that really works for him, and it's great. I've tried that, but I always feel I'm quite I'm a bit all or nothing. I quite having a clear distinction between like on stage, short bursts. I go and then I go quiet again, and then I have a cup of tea or whatever and a biscuit. I'm not like I feel like I feel a bit anxious if I'm on 24/7 or I'm out with out with friends or whatever, and I get the feeling that any moment they might ask me to show them something, and so I like to have clear boundaries. So for me, but then having said that, I went through a stage where I'd never do magic off stage, and then I thought this is a bit silly, especially when I want to do more of it as a career. I need to have something. So then I realized I need something that I can have that doesn't stress me out, but is amazing and will sort of tick that box of show us a trick. And so you don't have to go, oh, I'm not really, blah, 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 but you're not having to do a full show. So I think it was Oliver Tabor who suggested this to me. He said, oh, Baywave is great. It sits in your wallet, and it is great. And so I think it's been really useful for that. And when we used to, with my old creative partner, when we used to go to agencies to sort of show our portfolio and stuff like that, we would also do she's got outside interest, so she shows something like that, and then I would do a magic trick, or I do the hand twist, and then I do B-wave, and then that would be enough. So it was really good for that practically. For people who don't know, it is a classic, but if you don't know, so there's 4 cards. You say that they're the 4 queens, I think, in my set, and then you have to imagine that they remove either the people run it in different ways, but the way I do, so you remove either the black cards or the red cards and things like that, and then they pick from those one of them, to say they end up with the Queen of Diamonds, and then you spread the 4-card packet and you show that the Queen of Diamonds is the only one that's face up. But then you have 2 kickers, which is nice. Then you turn it, then you say, oh, maybe you think it's sleight of hand, so then you turn it round and it's the only one with a red back, the rest are blue, and then you show the faces of them, and then you show the faces are all blank. So great trick, classic trick. And I think also what's really good about it, as well as being useful, because it sits in wallet, I think the thinking is so smart as well, again, because you've got, without going too much into it, you've got an influence choice, shall we say, but then you've got a very free choice. And so having that 2-part is so smart, because that final choice, they can change up. Do you want to change your mind? They can change their mind. It's so free. And also for the reveals, it really made me realize that actually he's getting 3 reveals out of 1 influence choice, as it were. Like there's 1 choice, as it were, and there's 3 reveals out of there. Like, it's just really smart. And also what they don't really want to examine it either, or it feels like it's really fair, there's nothing to examine, or what they do want to examine isn't, they can, as it were. So I just thought that was really smart. And I think, obviously, you've seen things like Darren Brown, like the ending to Enigma, where it's just like reveal, 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 reveal. That's become more of a thing. But I just thought that was really interesting back then. And again, changing your thinking. So you're going, and the same with, which I know Andy Nyman said in his episode about the blank deck, the power of a blank deck to just be unusual. I think that's really interesting. It's so hard in a way as a magician, because we're so immersed in the world of magic, to sort of step back and go, well, actually, as a layperson, what are the things that will make it more amazing? They're based on the psychology of the spectator rather than it being a more complex technique or whatever. I think that's really interesting. I remember Darren's, was it, I think it was The System or something like that. Anyway, one where he was going through a whole room of Polaroid photos, and he doesn't get quite so, but I love that. It was a lovely routine, and they hand out envelopes, and I can't remember all the details, but basically, they picked a few pictures, and then he'd guess the right pictures, or their initials. The initials, the people matched their surname initials, I think, and then they'd had the envelope that had that person in, and then it had a number on the back, and you put the numbers together, and it equaled the chance of this thing occurring randomly, or something like that. But I remember just watching it and thinking afterwards, going, hang on a minute, like they've got at least 3 or 4 reveals out of the same, because then you go, oh, and you add that up, and then and that, and you go, yeah, but actually it's only 1 influencing of choice there, and then from that you've got boom, 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 you've got multiple reveals, and same with the B-wave, you've got 3 lovely, escalating reveals off 1 choice. That psychologically, wow, because you could do, I know you can do B-wave with sort of jokers rather than blank cards, but just blank cards are just weirder. So that stuck with me. So if I'm trying to create something, I'm trying to go, what's a weird, what really sticks with people, what they know or don't know, or like the trick with, I can't remember the name, but when you have the spoon and it turns into a fork, that's a great trick for the same reason, because forks, spoons, we have them every day. You just go, you could do the same trick with I don't know, a wand that turns into a different colored wand, and it wouldn't have the same impact. So I think it's just, yeah, that's really interesting. It's hard to notice them as a magician, but if you ever notice things about normal audience members and you go, well, what? The psychology thing again, but not in just in a fooling way, but just go, what is important? What do they remember? Or, you know, when you pour some milk out of a can of Coke, it's like everyone knows a can of Coke. That's not what happened. Like, what's in their head that would make things more amazing that isn't just down to the technical method?
Yeah, it's sort of like the way that human logic works. I think we can play a lot with human logic because if an audience sat down and really thought about it, then of course they would nearly definitely work them out. Certainly with chair tests and other effects like that. But something about the way that things are structured, I think, is what throws an audience off and throws off that logic. And something you said there with B-Wave, which I've never thought about before, but is absolutely true, is if we're going to use equivocate in anything, then allowing that end choice to be a legitimate choice would really throw off the idea of any force or journey that they've been pushed on, so to speak, to get there.
Exactly. It's just a really nice, and also you can't, I know, depending on how it evolves, and I feel like the Jerks has also touched on that kind of thinking. Like I've always tried and credit people as much as I can, but yeah, it feels like, I know that's not always possible, but also like equivocate is great, but also sometimes I feel like it's overused. Sometimes when when people go from 3 books down to 1 and then do a book test, and you go, and again, I can't remember, the Jerks may have covered this as well, but like, you've already got a choice of 50,000 words. Like, you don't, having a fudge, especially, we all know there's some equivocate which is like amazing, burgers, whatever, it's on it. And then we've all seen some where it's all a bit, now pick up 2, now hand it to me, now hand it back again. Now, like, you just go, is it worth like to do a 3-in-1 thing with some books when you've then got a 50,000 word choice? Like, does it really add? So I think if you can really end with a free choice, again, it's like you say, it's just separating yourself from it and going, this is really fun, or whatever the method is, or not one-way forcing deck, or or I have another trick. Yeah, exactly. I have a trick where I went through a whole bunch of methods for this thing, and then it was about emotions, and then I realized I had some sort of emojis on the things, and I just found it was that thing where you just go, oh, actually, one of the best methods is you show the first 4 cards to be different, and then you go, oh, and so on all the way down to, and you show the bottom cards different, and then all the rest of the pack is the same card. And like, it's that weird thing that is, there's so many more complex, elaborate methods you could use for that. But actually, as an audience member, once you've seen 4, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, fine, I get the idea. It's obviously a different pack. And then, whereas if you didn't do any of that, they might go, oh, yeah, they're all the same card. But once you get past the 4, they go, oh, yeah, I've got it now. Like you say, like a chair test or whatever, really tapping into what do they care about? What do they not? What are they going, oh, hang on a minute, what do they guess? What are the wrong guesses? That's always interesting, like the sleeve. Or I forget, when you forget to pull up your sleeves when you're doing magic and you vanish something, they go, oh, I went up your sleeves. And as a magician, like, no, it didn't. I did this really clever thing. It didn't go up the sleeve. But then you go, oh, yeah, but that's one of the things they think of. So you've got to, I really enjoy that bit of magic. In psychology, they call it theory of mind, the idea that different people can have different perspectives on the world, but how you have to sort of constantly, I sometimes say it's like a phone, flip the camera. You have to constantly like flip your view between like, what do I know? What do they know? What do I know? What do they not know? What do they suspect? What do I, do that? And it's fun because when you find one, you go, oh, that, like a chess test, you go, and I get away with that. Oh no, they don't suspect that at all. They suspect over here, and then you've got a new place to play.
Well, that leads us nicely into the tail end of your 8. So, what did you put in your 7th position?
Okay, so this one. So, like I say, more recently, I've got really back into card magic. I think it's partly because I think I'd had a break. Partly it's sort of circumstantial. That I just, like before bed, to wind down a bit, I got some, very prolific John Kerry. Like I got a whole bunch of his ebooks. So each night I would just, like learn a trick. And then I just really got back into it. And so from that, it's a card thing. But again, I like that adaptability. So I was going to go with Invisible Deck just because, again, I use it in a bunch of different ways. But instead, I'm going to go for the Snaps Deck by Dan Harlan, David Jonathan, and designed by Phil Smith. So if you don't know, this is the one that's got a bunch of different photos. So it's basically like a photo deck. I know there's been a couple now. I know Craig Petty's got a great one as well. and it's really smart. So it's a bunch of photos. If you don't know, you can tell which one they choose, and also each photo, if you look at it, it also suggests a letter or a number. So so it's a wonderful thing that you can do standard tricks, whatever. You can do any tricks you want to do with letter cards or number cards to, force a name or whatever. But it's sort of covered anyway, because until you reveal it, they just look like photos, and then you can go, oh, but actually, and then you get that nice sort of realization where you go, oh, and it spells whatever. But I think it's like I know the thing itself comes with multiple routines anyway, but I just think it's a really flexible. If I was going to do something, it's really, I've done. I was doing a thing at a workplace once with, and I like predicted the car number plate, which was quite fun. Like not that it was a really it wasn't like a really catchy like magic one or whatever. It wasn't that. It was just like a random one. But I was like, I don't know that much about these people, but it'd be fun to do something like that. But I know they always park their car there, so I was like, I could do that. But you could just do so. They probably don't have cars in the cyber, but if you meet a person, you can do something with that. So I like buying tricks. In my book Effervescent, shameless plug. One of the things I have in there is an essay which was originally on my blog called Clocks, Blocks, and Clay, and it's the basic idea that you could sort of categorize magic tricks into 3 types depending on how adaptable they are. So clocks is like one of those tricks where either it's highly mechanical or the presentation's printed on the cards or whatever, and it's like this really clever sort of Swiss watch, and you can't take, or a 10-year trick, I don't know, you can't really remove many points of it without it all falling apart, but it's this perfectly honed thing. And then blocks are your sort of modular routines, so ambitious card phases or ring on string or whatever, you can chop and change and do different bits. And then clay is something like so like Simon Lipkin mentioned, like a peak wallet or something like that, where you can pretty much do anything, or a sneak thief where you can write anything on there, or I don't know, maybe a pack of cards because you need, or maybe a pack of cards in a stack order or something that you can do almost anything with. So you've got maximum, you can mold it, shape it in any way you want. And so it's just that idea that if I'm buying stuff, I buy a lot of books because I love books. And if I do buy, I don't buy that many sort of physical tricks, but if I do, I try and aim for them not to be clocks. So there's some great tricks there, but you can only present it the way it's sort of presented, which is fine. But I always want to put my own twist on things. So if it is like that, I'll buy it and then I'll remake it with my own props and turn it into, something else. So I'll try and buy something that's either blocks and modular that I can then shift or move around, or I'll try and buy something that's a utility tool that you can do almost anything with. So that's why snaps, because I don't know what's going to be on the island, but there will be some people, hopefully, there'll be something you can do some things on there. And also like there was a bit of there was a little book called Point It they used to sell for people going on holiday where you could just point to things. So if you've got 52 things to point to if you're trying to describe, like, I don't know, raft or whatever, and they haven't got that, or fire, whatever, you can point to some of the cards hopefully and just use it as a communication tool if nothing else. But yeah, it's just then you've got space to play. So I just if you buy more blocks or you buy more clay things, if just around the house, there's another simple way for people to be creative. You've got space to play with that. Whereas if you're only buying things where everything's locked into the prop and you can only use it one way, it's going to be hard to be creative. So yeah, that I think with that it would be enough to play with. I can do all these standard card tricks, but you can also reveal names or places or anything else you want to do.
Well, I use snaps pretty much daily in my restaurant work, normally for younger folk. Because I think visual tricks, when it comes to young people, work so much better, basically, because it's almost like a universal thing. Images are known the world around. So even if someone has maybe a language barrier, as long as you know their name, you have a stunning revelation. And it's also great that you can prepare it before you approach a table. So normally the waitresses and the wait staff know what the trick is, and they know what's going to happen, so they know immediately to get the name for me. So I get a young person's name straight away. They'll come, let me know. I'll set up the deck before approaching, and literally just the sort of line that I use is, these cards are going to tell me something about you. So we're going to get you just to pick out some cards. They pick out some random cards. A lot of the time it's quite funny, especially I was at an event yesterday and there was like a 6-year-old, 7-year-old kid called Oliver, and a golf club came out. So of course, I thought, well, this kid's never going to be into golf. Turns out, absolutely loves golf.
Oh, hilarious, amazing. There we go, nailed it. You get a bonus hit.
So you get some great hits with it. Like, people just go, yeah, how did you know that?
Like the old fortune teller, that's supposed to be the equivalent of that, isn't it? I see something a bit red and they're like, ball. They're like, yeah, well, of course I play football. Of course, whatever, golf.
They are, it's just such a great trick. It's such a great deck. And it's a really good choice. And again, totally different to everything else. Gemini Twins, Killer Elite. We've now, in terms of a card trick, the three card tricks that you have here so far, Gemini Twins, I would say, is probably the most relatable to a classic card trick. B-Wave is more of a packet trick. It's kind of a quick mentalism piece. And now Snaps, which I would argue aren't really playing cards. They're photo
No, I
cards.
don't think they're seen like that. And especially if you're doing, exactly, because you got the force. And then you also, if you want to, force whatever, and then you can do, visual mind reading or drawing dupes with them or whatever. So no, I don't think it comes across. I mean, it's hard to say, not as a magician, but it doesn't feel like it shouldn't come across as a conventional card trick because it's a trick with photos, or I imagine, or photo cards or whatever. I imagine it will get remembered as, oh, that trick with photos, or that trick where he knew my name, like that. That's how he knew I played golf. That's if you always think of the imperfect memories, that's what you want. Like what will get remembered as, and I think it will get remembered as that. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that leads us very nicely onto your last selection. So what did you put in your last spot?
So my last selection, I hope you'll forgive, is the only one that sort of might like directly from me, I suppose, which is the coin jar, which yeah. So I will, just to people who don't know this, and also that if you want a specific item that's based on it, this is part of the routine. This isn't all the routine, but the part of it, the coin vanish, is based on coin unique, which we'll come to. But so I wanted to include one from mine, partly because it's so random, but also it's practical. I think there's this other thing that is a shame in Magic sometimes, is there's these camps that feel like it's either workhorse routine, yes, there we go, ambitious card, omni deck, there we go, solid workhorse, or some creative stuff is seen as, oh, it's a bit of a fluffy pipe dream, it's not a proper trick, but actually, or it's impractical or whatever. And some tricks are impractical, but then some workhorses are impractical. So you get some workhorses and they're still actually, you've got to carry 4 packs on you or whatever it is, So so this is I like it because it seems really random, and it is, but it's actually surprisingly practical once you've also, I think I quite like, I don't mind tricks that have a bit of a setup, but I like trick, that separation between one-time setup and every-time setup. And if you keep the jar, one-time setup. Anyway, I will go. So what the trick is, it's coin in bottle, sort of, but instead of a bottle, it's a factory sealed or a sealed jar of, I use pasta sauce, could be any jar of whatever. It's random, but it's nice because it's sealed and the safety button is down. And if you want to, I generally don't hand it out. So I'm worried about choking hazards or whatever, but if you want, you can hand it out to people because they can examine it at the end. And the trick is you say you're going to do a sort of test conditions coin in bottle, but to make it harder, it's going to be a sealed bottle that's never been opened. So you bring out the pasta sauce, which gets a chuckle because it's random. But again, easy twist, use some jam, use some whatever you want. And then they pick a coin. We've got a bag of coins because not many people carry coins. You've got like one of those clear sort of pouches, like stationary pouches with a bunch of coins in. They reach in, take one out, and so they end up with a 10p. Then you have a control coin because it's test conditions. So you put which is a 2p, you put 10p and 2p in their hand, and then you hold the jar like this. And then it's a nice thing where, a bit like I think David Parr has a trick called Copycat, but where they're sort of counter copying your gestures. So they put it on. So you copy. They put the jar on top. They rub the jar against the coins in their hand. They close their hand, and then when they lift it, there is now just one coin, the control coin. The other 10p is gone, and then they lift up the jar and they look underneath, and underneath is the coin. And the reason I like it is, it's random and it's fun, but also methodologically, without going into too much detail, it was one of the first ones where I tried to go from like a physics to like first principles, and I tried to logically go, how could you do this? Because they used to do it with, I came up with the actual like lid being sucked down is a sort of physics thing. It's not a magic method. I didn't know how to do it. And then my mum was like, oh, well, why don't you just, heat it up and that might work. So read the book for more details. But basically, it's a physics thing. So then I could get the lid down. And in my early book, one of the plot ones, I did it it was sort of a coin in Snapple bottle I used back then. But you could see it there, and then you would, you would sort of use magnet, whatever, and it would appear there. But it was it was an ending in search of a routine. So then, I came back to it and I thought, oh, well, like Barry Richardson comes back to his routine sometimes. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I can turn this into more of a thing. So I thought, well, if it's opaque, then it can be in there. People won't look at the bottom, even though you think they might do. It's there, but they don't. So they're not naturally looking there. So they'll assume it's not there. And then I thought about, and I thought, okay, well, it can't be signed because of the time it takes to set. I did come up with a way if you were doing a longer show, but basically it can't be signed. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, what about card trick? Because a card trick, I thought about David Blaine's card through window randomly, which is, again, just that analogous thinking of going, take something from a card trick and whatever. And I went, well, that's not signed. And that's amazing. So why does that work? And I was like, well, it's freely chosen as far as they know. It feels like they would have noticed it there beforehand, maybe, if it was on the window. There's proximity, and the pack gets close to the card. They're not just going, oh, here's your card, now look over there. The pack goes close to it. So I was like, well, maybe I can apply that sort of psychology to the jar. And so I went, okay, well, oh, and also the chance the chance of it getting there, the chance of any card being there is quite impossible. So I kind of nickname it the Fort Knox principle. But basically, if the theory is that if it's impossible for any card to get there, like if you open Fort Knox and there was a card there, then the fact that it's not signed is maybe less important because it's amazing that anything got there. So I was like, well, the chance of any coin being here is quite impossible into a sealed plastic jar. So maybe that'll help. Then proximity, I was like, how can I do something that's really hands off? So that's where the coin unique came in, where you can have two coins managed to one. Again, a routine that we just go, oh yeah, whatever. But amazing if you don't know the method to a non-magician audience. And then proximity, so rather than just having it vanish and appear, having them rub the coin against it, because magician, like lay people think like that anyway. You put your wallet on top of a deck and then they go, oh, well, hang on a minute, those hands came together or whatever. So then I went, okay. And then if it's a free choice or a seemingly free choice of coin, then that helps as well because it couldn't be there before because, how would you know? So it was really, so I tried all those and went, well, this actually works. And then I tried it and it actually plays really well. So it's a nice routine. And I used to carry it around in a sock so it doesn't get broken, which is not very glamorous, a clean sock. But yeah, and I did it, I did it multiple gigs. I did it up in Edinburgh, and it's one of those once you're set, you've got to reset the coin unique, but otherwise the bottle you can use again and again. You just have to sort of shake it down to make sure that the coin reaches down to the bottom. But yeah, it's just a really fun routine to do. And it's really hands off. And it's one of those where which is fun, you've got sort of three methods. You've got a coin force, you've got the sort of bottle prep, and you've got the vanish of the coin. And they all come together to hopefully make something which is, normally I want to play and all the rest of it. It's not always my priority to make something that's really incredible. That's not always my first priority. But in this case, I wanted something to just be like, what? But hopefully it all comes together like that anyway.
So I obviously saw you do this a few months ago at the Young Magicians Club, and one incredibly annoying thing that came out of it, I'm sorry to say, this is a negative. As soon as you learn the method, all you will do for the rest of your life is to see things that you can use for the method.
It's so true. You go, yeah, it's the new version of, oh, there's got to be a trick in that. It's like, I wonder if will it blend those old ads? It's like, I wonder if you can stick that in a bottle. Yeah, exactly. Or exactly. Or I go in, yeah, it's like when you go into a supermarket, the same, you go, lemon curd? Is that going to work?
So literally, you'll look at everything and you go, that would work. That would work. Yeah, it's great. And people who know, obviously, James Brown's Fancy a Pot of Jam.
Oh, Fancy a Pot of Jam.
There's lovely callbacks to that.
Every time I see a jam thing, I go, I should really put a thing in a jam thing, and I haven't got around to it. So yeah, exactly. That would be exactly ideal. Yeah. Oh, one thing I did discover though is if you use something very acidic like pasta sauce, I had one and I hadn't done it a while. And then someone said, "Oh, come and do a trick or wherever it was." So I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." So I got it, and it had corroded the coin, so it was still really effective. But then there was one, I left it with them, and there's always one person who really, really wants to find out how things were done. So they'd open the jar and pull it out, and it was like blackened from the acid over the. So I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's just a side effect of the magic." And I was like, maybe don't store that for more than a couple of weeks. They're good to know for next time.
Well, that's a great round off. So we've gone from Gemini Twins, Killer Elite, Holy Moly, Hydrostatic Glass, Wordo B-Wave Snaps, and your coin in jar. What is the name of it?
I call it coin jar.
Coin jar. Yeah. A great list, completely different, each one of them. Very, very diverse list. But it does lead us on to your 2 curveball items. Now, obviously, we've given you 8 of everything before now. Now you only get 1 book and 1 non-magic item. So what did you put in your book position?
So my book position, it's magic book, isn't it? I hope. Yes. Okay. So my book, which is hard because I've got so many. I thought I had about 50 magic books, and I counted one day, and it was it's over 150, or it's nearing 150. So I love magic books. So my book is, again, it's a little bit off-piece. So I thought about The Art of Astonishment, but unfortunately, because they were the books I had, my first big magic books, and they, obviously Paul Harris, similarly offbeat. Like I love his stuff, but there's 3 of them, so that doesn't quite count. So I thought I'd do one which maybe isn't as well known, but I think is really good, which is called Be More Funny, and it's by Christopher W. Barnes, and he performs. He performs as Christopher T. Magician when he's performing for kids. And the reason I like this is on a similar theme. So the basic premise of the book, which is really interesting. So he mainly does children's magic, but he also does tricks for adults, and this is sort of based around that. And the basic premise is that he takes a whole bunch of different comedy tropes. So again, outside inspiration, he takes a bunch of comedy tropes from TV shows and films, and then he takes each one, and then he goes, well, given that trope, how could I don't know if this is one here, for instance, doing things in slow motion. That's not the one, or mishearing a word, say. And then he goes, how could you apply that to magic? And then for most of them, he'll have a trick about that. And then he'll also have a bunch of other ways that you could push things. And he's got a whole bunch of other ideas in there as well. And it's just so fun and refreshing a book. And it's one of those books. I like books. I like, it's what I aim for when I'm writing my own, but I like any kind of books I read that get my own brain whizzing with ideas, or like you said with the jam thing, like where you just go, oh, you could do that, or you could do, oh, that's an interesting angle. So I think it's a really interesting way of thinking. I haven't specifically gone through myself and gone, what are comedy tropes would you apply? But I like that sort of outside inspiration of going, here's another concept, and then how can you apply that to magic? And then how, what are 3 different ways you could do that? And how could you push that somewhere? So I just think it's really, it's one of those books that I go back to, like I know, like Strong Magic or whatever, or Art of Astonishment, that I need to go back to, where each time you go back to it, you find something fresh, because there's just so many ideas in there. And there's the fully fledged rounded routines, which are great. There's I'm not a fan of vaping personally, but there's a fun routine where you sort of vanish a vape, I think there's in here, and then it reappears in a bag, kind of like nested boxes, but different. It's just really interesting. He's also he suits that style of going, here's this, what about this, but how about you twist it to that? Or how about you do, Carlin Billy Lemon, but actually you've got 50 lemons, or like whatever. He just goes this, but with a twist. He's really good at doing that. And so I think I would enjoy that, because it would just feed my brain, like my hungry brain, which is always hungry for ideas. And also because there's so many different jumping off points, I feel like I could come back to it several times and go, oh, okay, I've got this coconut and a whatever it is, in a raft. And then I go, well, what can I do with, oh, okay, well, what about a silent movie with a coconut raft? Or what about, Williamson striking vanish with a branch and a coconut and a very big hand. So that would keep me happy there, just because it's so varied and it's about creativity, which makes me happy.
Great. And maybe one that not as many people are aware of. So that's a really nice one for people to pick up.
I think he's gone under the radar a bit, but I think it's just really interesting, and like I say, like you like any of these books, you might not do all of them, but like it just gets your brain thinking, and often it's using existing methods or tweaks on existing methods, so it's not unachievable or out there stuff. I think it's just really interesting. I'm surprised it doesn't crop up more, because it's really creative.
Well, that leads us onto your item. And I mean, you've already got some quirky items in there. You've already got a glass with you. You've already got a jar. So you've got food on your island with you. You've got postcards with Killer Elite to write home with. You've got cards to play some games with. So what did you put in your item?
So that is a good point. I hadn't taken that in. That's good. I'm set up too badly there. That's good. That's good. I need a duvet or something. But so again, I consider the notepad and pen for ideas because I don't know if it's all creative people or just me, but I met a few. I'm very good at coming up with ideas. Remembering things is not so much. So my phone's app, I've always got things in there. But I thought that people will have said that probably. So instead, I'm going to go with another food item to go with not at the same time, but separately. I'm going to go with some Garibaldi biscuits. And the reason is I don't get hangry, but I do get a bit, it doesn't sound as good, but despair, basically. If it's late at night and I haven't eaten anything, I'll just get a little bit like, oh, like everything seems a bit hard. And I feel like a little bit like, or you're trying to, if you hit a wall where you're trying to problem solve on a trick or something, you can't quite get it, or like, I'm a bit like you're trying to juggle three things that you're doing in life or life admin or whatever it is. And you get to a point and I'm like, oh, but I know myself enough by now. If I've had a cup of tea and maybe I'll just have some hot water or whatever. If I have some cup of tea and a Garibaldi biscuit, or even I think Garibaldi because I read Treasure Island. I hadn't read it until recently. I read Treasure Island because I realized I never read it. And there's a bit in there where he goes back into the ship and there's some wine and there's some like crackers and some raisins and I think some dried meat or something. He just eats those and I was like, oh, there we go. So that feels suitably cast away. And also they're quite flat. So, you could probably do some kind of packet trick if you got really bored with the, when I've worn out the rest of my cards and all the rest of it and I've got nothing left, I can be munching on some and sort of fiddling with some packet trick with my hands, and that'll keep me happy and hopeful.
So if anyone listening to this has Oliver turn up for a lecture, you must greet him with some biscuits, just in case he's hangry.
Yeah, exactly. Just feed me food, like food, sleep, magic, like food, naps, and magic, like that. That's about, and family. Family should probably come first, but as long as I've got that, I'm a happy bunny. I'm a simple man. So yeah, exactly.
Well, that's a great list. Now, if people do want to find out more about you and your new book and maybe lecturing, where can they go?
So yeah, that would be lovely. So I'm like I said, like about 10 years ago with the plot books or wherever I was around and lecturing and stuff like that. Now I've gone freelance again, so I finally have time for the first time in a while. So I have more time. So I am I'm looking into booking some lectures at the moment. So yeah, absolutely. So drop me a line. I'm on Facebook. I'm Oliver Meech and I look like this. There's not that many Oliver Meeches out there, hopefully. I'm olivermeech.com. Or if you want my book, so my new book is called Effervescent, and that is available. I think Alakazam may stock, Murphy's have some, but if you want to buy it direct from me, that would be amazing. If you just go to Lulu, Lulu, like the singer, lulu.com, and then just put my name, Oliver Meech or Effervescent in there, then it will come up. And then it's print on demand, so they send them out. But it also means that my old books are there as well. So if you want to get the plot books, they're there, and my ebooks and stuff like that. If shipping's difficult, you can get Effervescent as an ebook. So yeah, that'd be great. So if you want to get some of them, that's great. If you want to see some of the magic live, I'm also considering adding creative coaching because I quite enjoy creativity, and also I've worked in agencies. I've been kind of head of copy and I've mentored other people. So if anyone is interested, I don't have a formal offering on my site, but if anyone wants some sort of help brainstorming as a bouncing ideas or is feeling stuck or whatever, then drop me a line about that. But just my email's on olivermeech.com, or go on lulu.com and search my name, and book me for things, and I will come and do magic for you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Oliver. It's nice to finally get you on here.
Yeah, it's so nice to be on here. I love it. I enjoy listening to it. It's so nice to be asked. I really enjoyed it.
And Oliver is one of the guests who actually did quite a few notes. He showed me the notes at the very beginning. They're all typed up very nicely. He did a lot of effort and put a lot of effort into this. So yeah, thank you again.
Oh, you're very welcome. Loved it.
And again, if you guys aren't aware, we do have a version of this which goes out on a Monday called Stranded with a Stranger. If you want to be a part of that, you can send in your list of 8 tricks, 1 item and 1 book to sales@alakazam.co.uk. In the subject line, put My Desert Island Tricks. That way it comes through to me. Please do include a little bio about yourself, obviously why you chose those tricks, and we will get one of those recorded for you on a Monday. Of course, we'll be back next week. We are nearly approaching, at the time of recording this, the end of the first season now. Now, obviously, we record these a few months in advance, so we've nearly recorded an entire year's worth, and that's not including, that's just the main podcast. Of course, with all of the other ones, I think we're well over 100 episodes now at the time of recording, so, that's pretty crazy. Now, we're going to introduce something new next year into the new season, which should be fun. Another thing that our guests can do. So they can do one more thing on their island, which I think would be quite funny. So with that being said, we'll see you next week. Of course, Monday with Stranded with a Stranger, Friday with the main podcast. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Hello guys, I'm here to talk to you about Alakazam Unlimited. This is the best streaming platform in the world, I'm telling you now. With Alakazam Unlimited, you get access to over 150 magic routines. This is video performances and explanations. We have card magic, coin magic, kids magic, rope magic, mentalism, stage, parlor, impromptu. We've got you covered. All of this for the low price of just £4.99 a month, and you can cancel at any time. Perfect if you've got commitment issues. Yes, I'm talking to you. Guys, you are going to absolutely love it. If you haven't joined the platform already, what the heck are you doing? Alakazam Unlimited is a streaming platform that you need to be a part of. Not only that, there is also exclusive content only available on the platform. Check it out now, alakazam.co.uk. Cheers.